Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you to the Project Solve SP RFI Log webinar today, Thursday, June 9th, 2016. We are scheduled from 11:30 until approximately 1, depending on how many questions and things we have at the end. My name is Lynn Novak. I am a consultant in District 4 helping with Project Solve SP. I will be demonstrating the RFI Log feature today during the webinar. Just so everyone knows, the webinar will be recorded and available on the construction site for everyone to review at a later date. During today's webinar, the raise hand feature will be turned off, but you will be allowed to submit questions. You can type your questions in the question box showing in the webinar window on your computer screen. The questions will be prioritized, and at the end of the webinar, we will go through the list of questions and we'll answer as many as we can, beginning with the highest priority ones first. All the questions submitted during the webinar will be written up with the corresponding answers and posted along with the webinar recording on the FDOT construction site for viewing at a later date. All right, today, PSSP RFI Log. What will we be reviewing in today's webinar? First thing we're going to look at is, and I know for some people this may be repetitive since some people may have been using training sites or pilot sites already, we're going to go over how to access your project sites from the DOT site. Then we're going to go over adding and processing requests for information, RFI, request for modification, RFM, request for correction, and request for nonconformance and noncompliance report. Then I have a couple of slides that I just wanted to show everyone on what the contractor's view looks like when they log into the site and when they go into review an RFI. Then I have a couple of slides to show what the EOR's view looks like, what they see when they review or when they make a comment. And then the last thing we'll do is we'll go through the list of questions and we'll answer the questions that we have time for at the end of the webinar. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go over how to get to the launch page from the DOT site. So the first thing you're going to do is you would type in www.dot.state.fl.us, which is going to take us to the main construction page for the Florida Department of Transportation. Once you're on that page, you're going to click on the Offices link. From there, you'll scroll down, click on Construction. Once you're on the construction page, on the left-hand side, you're going to want to click on Programs and Services. From the Programs and Services page, you're going to scroll down to the section called E-Construction. The last link under E-Construction is Project Solve. On this page is all of your Project Solve links. There's login instructions, reset password, user account creation page, and all the webinars that have been completed will be posted or are posted on here. The link that we're going to use today to go to the central office launch page is going to be this first one here, Project Solve SharePoint launch page. You're going to click that link, and it's going to ask you for your username and password. You're going to want to put in your PBSVC / whatever your Project Solve username is. Then you're going to enter your password and click OK. This should bring you to the main launch page for the central office, which is where you'll be able to access any of your project sites that you will be working on. This is the FDOT construction launch page. You're going to scroll down and you're going to find whatever district you work in. You'll open that up. For today, we're using the District 4 training site. You're going to click on the site that you want to go to, and your page will come up. You won't have to log in since you've already logged in on the main page at this point. From this location, to add an RFI, you have two choices. You can either use the Upload RFI, RFC, RFM link, or you can use the link here under the List and Library section on the main page. Today we're going to just go ahead and use the Upload link on the right. At this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter a RFM. So I'm going to select RFM. For my title, I'm going to say request to change from RCP to PVC pipe, just as my test item. Under the details, I'm going to put the same thing. Request to change from RCP to PVC pipe at, now let's do along State Road 80. Because I'm a person who would be on the CEI side, let's say that I'm putting that in. If I'm the PA, I could go ahead and put in my CEI request number. If I'm an inspector or a CSS or something that's adding this for the PA, I may just go ahead and leave it blank. PA can add it later. At this point, I'm gonna be the PA. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna put in my CEI request number. And we're gonna make this a 003. And then at this point, being the PA, I'm gonna put some comments in. I'm gonna send this to the EOR, so I'm gonna tell the EOR, please review the details and respond with approval. Then at that point, I want to notify the EOR. So I'm going to check the Notify EOR box. My login today is as an owner on the site. So I may see a lot more boxes than some of you may, depending on what role you are on the project. At this point here, as a PA is pretty much going to be seeing the same thing that I'm seeing right now. So the PA is going to scroll down. They're going to save the item. Also, if you have an attachment, say you have a picture or a document or something you want to attach, you can always do that also. You would just go to the top ribbon and you would save, click on the attach icon and attach your document. So as you can see, if I go to the RFM, there's my new item that I just put in, and it's saying the review by EOR workflow is in progress. So now, with a new item being added, I should receive a notification as the PA. And there's my email. This notification would be sent out to the project administrator and the contractor document reviewers, which would be your CEI team. Lets them know what site this is coming from, which contract. It's letting them know which ID number it is. It gives you whatever the title is and the details that were written in there. At this point, I can go ahead, if I want to, I can go back and review the item just to make sure I didn't miss anything. If this was submitted by, say, your inspector or a CSS or somebody else that submitted the item for you, you could click on here, being the PA, to go to the item and review it, and it would open that on the project site. And there's the item. And as you scroll down, you'll see that it's filled in the information. So the PA could take a look at it just to make sure everything was there and there were no issues with it. Now, as the EOR, at the same time, the EOR receives a task notification. The EOR, because we checked the box to notify the EOR, they get this notification that would be sent to the engineer of record, and it says this new item ID has been a task assigned to you, and it gives them what type it is. It's a request for modification. It tells them any details that were written in there. So then what they do is they can just follow the steps. The EOR will go ahead, they will click here to review the submittal, which is going to open up the submittal. Now, because I'm logged in, it's not asking for a username and password. If you were getting this in your email and you didn't have Project Solve open, when you click on the link, it's going to ask you for your username and password. So you would just fill that in, and then it'll open up the item. So as the EOR, you can go in here, review the information. If there's an attached document, it'll show down here. You can open that document and take a look at it. Do whatever you need to do with that. Once you're done here, as the EOR, you want to put in the comments. So step 2, click here to type the comments in Project Solve. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to click on it. It's going to open my item for edit this time. As the EOR, when I actually go in, if I was in the EOR role group, all of the comment boxes that you see that are open would be closed. The only box that would be open is this one right here for the EOR. So I'm going to go ahead and say the request for the change from RCP to PVC is approved. The EOR will fill this in. They will go to the bottom, save the item. And there we go. Item is still showing in progress because the EOR has not closed out their task yet. So at this point, what we want to do, we want to go back to that email again, which is right here. We've already clicked in here. We've already went to the comments, and now we want to click here to respond to the task. Say you're interested and you want to see what's in the workflow and the process of the workflow and what status is at right now. An EOR, they can still click here, open up the workflow status, take a look at that, and if you look at the workflow status, you'll see it's went through all the green items, and at this point it's sitting with the EOR. The task assignment, they have to make a selection of one of these 3 items. Once that happens, 2 other boxes, changes the value to no, and it sends out a notification. So the EOR can take a look at that and see if there was somebody else that was involved that, had to review or anything. But this gives them a status of where it's sitting. And as you can see, it's sitting with them currently. So we go back here now. The EOR wants to close out the task. They're going to open their task. They're going to say, I added comments in PSSP. If they want to make sure they have the right item, when you scroll down, you'll see all the information for the item that's here. They can go ahead and look at that. If they want to click on the attachment, if there's an attachment, they can open that and review it again before they finalize their task. Once you're done, click OK. Sometimes it takes a minute for it to we'll go back to the RFI. There's our request. Number 16, you can see that the review by EOR has been completed. And also at this point, a notification came out to the initiator of the item, and it CCs the project administrator. So if it was the initiator was a project administrator, the project administrator will be the only one that gets the email. And it says the engineer of record has completed the review of the submittal item. It tells them which item it is that was requested by you. And you can click here to review the comments. Now, you'll see the note down here in the email. The note says that the system has unchecked the box for notify EOR for review as a result of the completed action of the EOR. So at this point, the PA will go here. They will click on the item. They can take a look now, see what the EOR's comments were, which are right here. So you'll see that he says that everything was approved. Scroll down, no attachment, so you don't have to worry about checking that. At this point, the PA is going to want to go ahead and put in the final response so that the contractor can be notified that the RFI or RFM or RFC has been approved. So they're going to edit their item. They're going to go ahead and scroll down to the very bottom. There's two boxes. There's a draft response box and there's a final response box. The draft response box would be used, say you sent this out to 3 or 4 different people and you got a few different comments back. What you would do is you could start working on a draft response for each one that comes in. Since they're going to come in at different times, you may want to start working with one, then add a little bit more to it, then add a little bit more to it. This draft response cannot be seen by the contractor. They will only see the final response box. It also does not send a notification out if you keep modifying the item and putting the draft response information and updating it. It will only send a notification to the contractor once the final response has been filled out. So if you have a bunch of different comments, you may want to go in there and start putting them together and just leave your draft there and keep working on that as comments are coming in. Once you're completed, you can go down here and then you could copy and paste that into the final response. So at this point, I'm just going to say that EOR has approved the request for the change from RCP to PVC pipe. If this results in a plan revision, then you would want to check the box. If it doesn't, you can just leave it. So at this point now, once I save it, I should get a notification that goes to the contractor letting them know that this has been approved. So I'm going to save it. And once that saves, then I should get an email. So there's my item, and my email just came in. So here's the email that would go to the contractor. It lets them know that there's a final response available. The green writing here says it goes to the contractor contributors and the contractor PM. It gives them what project site it's coming from, so they could be working on a bunch of different sites, so at least it lets them know which contract it's coming from. And it says, please see the final response for the request to change from RCP to PVC pipe. Comes from the contractor initiated submittal log, which is the RFI log. The final response is written right here on this line. It adds it right to the item so that they can see it in the email. So if they don't want to, they don't have to go back and look at the whole item. So if they want to review the item, let's say, they would click here. And it's going to open up the site. If they weren't logged into the site, it would come up with the login box. Here's the item. They will be able to go here and look at the final response. Now, at this point also, once this is completed, the PA, once they fill in the final response, they're going to want to approve the item. So what they would do is they will come here after this had saved. While the email is working to go to the contractor, at this time they will go in here. They could click on the Items tab at the top. You select the item, click on the Item tab, and then up here at the top you see Approve Reject. So the PA would approve the item. If you want, you can put a comment in here, and then it'll show as in approval comments in that column. And then you just click OK. Once this updates, you'll see the pending will change to approved. So now our item is approved. And we can also go here and look at the other view, which shows all of the closed out items. So here you would see that these items here are approved and closed. So those would show them in a closed view. So you could go in and look at how many you've closed out through your project. There's also another view in here you may want to look at. There's approve reject items. So here's a pending and approved. If you had anything in here that was maybe rejected, that would show here also. It's grouped by each different approval status. There's an all items view here. If you want to just look at the list of everything. You can filter. If you're looking for a certain request number, you can go in here and you can select on the list a certain number that you're looking for a contractor. If you're looking for a certain CEI number, this is an easy way to search. And like I said, there's a couple of different views that you can try out when you're working on here also. So here's another one for all the submittals, preview all the submittals. So this one pretty much looks a lot like the other one. Now the other thing I wanted to show you, this would be more or less the process for an RFI. The other thing I do want to show you now is I have a couple of slides to show you what the contractor sees and what the EOR would see. When the contractor logs onto the home page and they see the links, they're gonna see the contractor quick links, the district review links, and the listen library link at the bottom. They'll see all the links here in the middle, and they can use any of the links that are showing here. They do not see the box that had the CEI links. When I logged in, you saw that box that there was the extra grouping in there for CEI links. When the contractor's on the site and they're in a contractor group, they will not see those links at all. This is what the contractor sees when he adds an item. Those are the only columns that they have access to. Any of the other comment boxes, notify boxes, any of that, CEI request number, any of that, they do not have access to modify. So when they go in, they can go in and add their submittal. They can put the title, they can put the details, they can put their request number and a reference document if they're going to be referencing a plan set or a standard index or a special provision. Those are the only things they have access to. Anything else that is done on the RFI log would be done by the project administrator CEI team. Or if they notified somebody, an EOR would have access to their box. A project manager would have access to their box. This is what the contractor sees when he would have clicked on the link saying that the final response was available. When his item opens, these are the only items that he sees. As you can see, the submittal, the title, the detail, contractor request number, and the reference contract document are the same as when they create a new item. The view field adds the CEI request number. In case they track that, they can at least see which CEI request number it is. They also see the attachment, and they see the final response box. As you can see, they do not see the draft response. So you can write in there whatever you want. Any comments that are done by the department, by CEI, by designers, any of that, they do not have access to any of that. This is all they see when they would be looking at an RFI on the list. For an EOR, if you were in the EOR group, for example, since this was one I was using for this, I just show you what that view is. You can see in the edit, they can see at the bottom, they can see the attachments, they can see the comments that people may have put. They can see your draft response if there was a draft response in there. They can also see all the items at the top, the submittal, the title, the details, all of that. But the only box that's available to them to modify in this edit view is their comment by EOR box. So there isn't a problem with them going in and maybe making a comment in the incorrect box for the contractor or for the project manager or for the designer or the project manager, anything like that. They don't have access to any of that, a DCE box, state construction office box, any of that. They can see the comments but they're not allowed to edit them. And that concludes the webinar. So now we can take a look at the questions. Okay, let's see. First question, why would you just not use the RFI or RFM number instead of also having a CEI number? The CEI number, you could use the same number as RFI, RFM if you want. If you're writing it another way, you could do RFI1, RFI2, RFM1, RFM2 in the box where the CEI number is. It would work either way. It depends on how you want to manage your site. Each project administrator may elect to do it a little bit differently. The box is called CEI number, but if you want to call, individually an RFI or an RFM or an RFC, if you track them that way, you have that option. Second question. Frequently, the CEI generates its own CEI RFI. Is there a process for that which won't be seen by the contractor? Currently, they would have access to the item without the comments or any of that in there. They could see just the basic information, an RFI that you submitted in there with the details, the title, your CEI number, and if the final response box is empty, they would never see a response. Currently, we don't have another way of doing it where you would be processing a CEI RFI separately that they couldn't see. Other than the way it's set up now, they just wouldn't see a final response if you didn't put anything in the box. Next question. In District 3, as the CEI, we are required to notify the FDOT project manager and construction engineer along with the EOR. What is the process in performing this requirement? As you saw when I went in and I checked the box for the EOR, you would at that same time check the box for the DOT project manager and for the construction engineer. They would get a notification just like the EOR's notification. They would be able to click the link. They would be able to review the item. They would be able to put comments in their comment box. So at the time that you select the EOR, if you're required to send it to all three, you would just check 3 boxes at that point, and all 3 notification workflows would run. Next question. What if there is more than one EOR, example JPA or utilities? Doug, I don't know if you have any input on that.
Yeah, if you have other EORs that are relative to the project, what you can do is add them to the EOR group in the security on the project. And when these RFIs go to the EOR, the first respondent is the one that gets applied to the request for information. So if one of the EORs responded before the other, it would be his relative information. If you had another EOR that would respond to something different, he would respond to it. So whoever responds first will be the one that gets acted upon. So you can have multiple EORs in the security group. I guess that answers the question, doesn't it, Lynn?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, let's see. Next question. Do the notifications go to the person's email or message notification in SharePoint? The notifications would go to the email that's associated with the user ID that you're using when you log in. So for example, like for me, I'm a consultant. I have 2 emails. I have my consultant email address and I have my DOT email address. For my Project Solve account, for that user account, I am using my DOT email. So any of the emails that are coming out that I may be getting, if I'm a creator or if I'm an initiator on something or I'm in a role group, that goes to my DOT email. Next question. If the contractor delivers an RFI via email and the CSS submits the RFI through PSSP, how does the contractor receive notice of the RFI in PSSP? If the contractor, let's say the contractor emails the CSS and the CSS adds the item into the RFI log. They would be able to attach that email. They could PDF the email, attach the email as an attachment when they fill in the information. They would save it. It would go through the process. The PA would process it. The PA would do whatever they need to do, notify whoever they need to notify. Once it's done and completed, when the PA puts the final response in the final response box, the email notification will go to the contractor and notify them that there's a final response available. Next question would be, can you set up read receipt once a notification has to be issued to a user? Doug, that might be a question for your end.
I'm not sure that there is a capability of doing a read receipt. I don't think you can do that.
I don't know of any way of doing that either.
You could put a flexi task on the notification to the contractor that he would click on and, you know,
have to respond to the task.
Yeah, if he responded to a task, then you could do it that way. But he could receive the notice and never do that. One thing for sure, it goes to the project documentation. And you know that if the contractor's in the recipient group for being notified about it, that the email was sent.
Next question, how did you open up the email? The email, so everyone can still see my screen, the emails came in here into my regular Outlook web access. So each one of the emails is here, so I'm using two screens, so I just kept the email off the screen, and I just dragged them in for each one I opened. But the email will come to you just like this in your regular email. Here's the final response email. So these are the ones that came out. I got all of them because they're set up to go back for the training site. They're set up to go back to the person who added the item. But at this point, the green area here would be what tells you where it's going on these items. So legitimately, in the real world project site, the email would have been sent to the contractor contributors group and the contractor PM. So whoever was in those role groups would have received this notification. Same thing for the EOR. This would have went to the initiator of the item and the project administrator group. So if your PA is the only one in the group, they would receive the email. If your PA and your CSS are in that group, they both would have received that email. This new item would go to the project administrator and the contractor document reviewers. So the email notifications come into your email just like a normal email would. Why would the response go to the contractor in your example? They did not request it. The system set up, if you put a final response in, that it sends a notification to the contractor letting them know that there was an RFI out there that had been finalized. If you don't want that to go, you wouldn't have to put a final response in the box. You could just leave it blank. It would never send a notification to the contractor, but the contractor would still have access to open the item. They would see it on the list, but they would never see any of the comments and never see any response at the end. If you just put a draft response in, everybody else could see the draft response except for the contractor. Is there a way to place deadlines in PSSP for responses? There is, and that's more of a Doug question. It's not something we're using right now. Doug, if you have more input on that one.
Yeah, if on those flexi tasks, you can also put in where it continues to bug the crap out of you until you do it. You can also, on the document library itself, create a creation date when it was received and send out reminders based on that date time clicking by. You could send one out every 5 days or something. And,
right.
And if it didn't get a response by the end of a certain number of days, you can also fire off another action task to the PA to make sure something happens with it. If
there's also,
you know,
there's also the delegation feature too, where if it goes so many days, it can be delegated to another person.
right. Those are good questions there too.
And this one looks like the last question. If you are not logged into PSSP and you receive an email, do you need to log in if you click on a link within the email? Yes. Because I was already logged in when I originally went to the site, it wasn't requesting me to log in. If you were working a normal day, you weren't using Project Solve, you were the EOR, you were doing something on other applications, when your email came in and you clicked on that link, it would prompt you when it goes to the site. It would prompt them to log in before they can get to the site.
One thing to add to that, if project staff work on a particular project site frequently, like all week, you know, they're in there all the time, they can store their password on their machine that they're using to access the site, and it won't prompt them for the password. There's ways to do that. So, for example, if a CSS in an op center receives hundreds of emails a week from these applications and the projects, they wouldn't have to continually have to log on. They could just click on the links and it would go right in.
And we have another question. What if the contractor enters an RFM as an RFC? Is there a way to change? Yes. The PA will pretty much be the one that's managing their project site. So when the RFI comes in and the PA gets a notification that the contractor submitted an RFI, and they click the link and go there to review the submittal and send it to or notify whoever they need to notify, if they see that they selected the incorrect type of RFI, RFM, RFC, they can modify it at that point. And that was the last question.
Those are great questions too. They may lead to some changes that might occur in the system later. And I'd point out, if I can, Lynn, if you don't mind,
go ahead.
Whenever you have ideas to make the system better, go to the issues and bugs link on the site and say this is a recommendation for a modification or an enhancement, and submit it. And the CPR group that's involved with Project Solve, that's a statewide group, will be reviewing those enhancement requests throughout the whole, until end of creation, whenever this system goes away. So, yeah, come up with ideas to make things better and submit them. That's the whole thing. Feedback is the best thing we got.
Right. And if everybody can still see my screen, up here at the top is where the reporting issues and bugs link is. And that will go to, it'll open up an item and you can fill in the information. You can attach a document. If you have a suggestion for something, go ahead. You can print screen something, attach it, send in your information, and it will go to central office. And they can review all of those.
Yeah. Even if you want to ask a question about the system, you can submit it there. Lynn, that was an excellent job. I'm very pleased with how it went. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, Lynn has been a pivotal, active person in this whole process, and she deserves a hand, applause, if I can say that.
Thanks, Doug.
Want to thank everybody for coming to the webinar, and Lynn, thank you for doing such a great job. And
thank you.
If there's no more questions, we'll go ahead and close it down. And true, if you have any more, send them via email to the systems group in Tallahassee, and we'll make sure that the CPR group gets them.